Welcome to another episode of Into the Wind. On the last episode, we discussed getting our wind speed and how to calculate that wind speed, calculating our full value wind. On this episode, we're going to be talking about how to adjust and account for a wind coming at a different angle. Once we have our wind speed, we need to get the direction. Once we have that direction, we need to know how to account for that direction. So I like to keep this method as simple as possible. I like to use the clock method. So every target that we're engaging, the way I do this is that is going to be our 12 o'clock. So even if it's not like north, a lot of people look at north being 12 o'clock. It doesn't matter the direction. If I'm facing this way, that's 12 o'clock. If I'm facing this way, that's 12 o'clock. So whatever degree, whatever angle that my wind is coming from is going to be from the direction of my target being at 12 o'clock. So even if I move on the same range, that is my new 12 o'clock. So with the 12 o'clock, the clock method, one thing to remember, I would definitely recommend getting pen, paper, pencil, whatever, write this information down and then put it onto some type of card that you can keep in your note book. And then obviously you do want to memorize this stuff as well. Every 30 minutes on the clock is going to equal to 15 degrees. So 12 o'clock being 0, 12:30 is going to be 15 degrees. So the reason we need to know that is once we memorize this is we need to know the sign of that angle, that 15 degree angle. So then we have, I'm going to go all the way from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock in 30-minute increments. So 12, 12:30, 1, 1:30, 2, 2:30, 3, and all the way to 3 o'clock. So I've already got the signs written down. So if we have a wind coming in at 12:30, we're going to have 0.25. So the sign for 15 degrees is 0.25. What that tells us is that we're going to only account for 25% or a quarter of that wind value. Now we can apply this in two different ways. Let's say we have a 10 mile per hour wind. We can apply this right at the beginning with that 10 mile per full value wind. We can say we're going to only need to adjust for 25% of that, which would be 2.5 miles an hour. I'd round that up to 3, and then we'll continue with our calculation. The other way that we can do that is we can go ahead and do our calculations, know what our full value mil hold is going to be, and then we can apply 25% of that to our mils. So let's say we got whatever it comes out to where we got 1 full mil for a full value wind. The wind is at 12:30, so we're going to only account for 25% of that. Well, 1 full mil, 25% of that's going to be 0.25, or we're going to round that up to 0.3 mils. So we can apply that sign to either the wind speed or to our mil value for our full value wind. So let's take a look at this and kind of see how this works out. So at 12:30, we're going to have 0.25, so 25% of our wind. At 1 o'clock, we're going to have 50% of our wind. At 1:30, it's going to be 70%. At 2 o'clock, it's going to be 86%. At 2:30, it's going to be 96%. And then 3 o'clock is a full value wind. So it's fairly easy to remember because the first half goes up in quarters, 25, 50, and then 70. You can just think of that as like 25, 50, 75. Knock off that 5, got 70, and then 86, 96. So at 96, 2:30, it's going to be very, very difficult to account for 0.04% of a windage. So to make this a little bit easier, if you need to, go ahead and make 2:30 and 3 o'clock a full value wind. I usually going to stick with that in 1,000 yards or less. Now, if I'm shooting ELR, if I'm getting way out there, then I'm going to go ahead and use that 0.96 to get as accurate wind call and calculation as I possibly can. However, with those extreme long ranges, I'm actually not going to use this at all. Like let's say it's coming in at 1245, right? I'm going to get the cosine exactly for, I'm sorry, not cosine, but the sine for 1245. So now that we understand where the sines come in at these angles, let's jump over to our ballistic calculator and take a look at how that works out for us. Another thing I did want to mention is these sines only go, or this angle only goes to 90 degrees. Once we start coming back around, it's the same thing. So it's 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, and then it kind of starts going back down. The 75, 60. Now you can use the full number. So as it goes around 105, you can use that. You're going to get the correct sign for it. However, this just keeps it simple to me. So as it goes back around 25, 50, 70, 86, 96, full value wind, you're going to start going back down to 96, 86, 70, 50, 25, and then at 6 o'clock, it's going to be 0. So this just keeps going around and goes back up and then back down. So keep that in mind as well. But let's go ahead and jump over to our ballistic calculator and take a look at this. I wanted to show you how these angles work. So just to make math easy, we're going to go to, I want our full value wind to equal 1 full mil. This will just make math easier for us and make it easier to explain. So with my gun, 6 mile per hour gun, 600 yards, a 10 mile per hour wind, we should know a 6 mile per hour wind would give us 0.6, and a 10 mile per hour wind should give us a full mil. So because our yardage equals our gun number, this is right where 1 mile per hour wind will equal 1/10 of a mil. So if I have a 15 mile per hour wind, that's going to give me a 1.5 mil hold at 600 yards. Okay, so let's take a look at our angle. So here we have a full value wind, so we should have a full mil, and we do right down here in the green. So now let's take this and go to 1230, which remember we talked about 15-degree angle. So this is going to be 25% value. Now we're going to save that. So we know we have a full mil. So this is going to, since we can only go to 1 decimal point, it's probably going to round it up to 0.3, but we know 10 or 25% because that's the sign for a 15-degree angle, which would be 1230. That's going to give us 0.25. So we're going to hold for 25% or 0.25 mils. And you can see that's going to round it up to 0.3. Now let's take a look if we go to 1 o'clock. Now 1 o'clock is a half value wind, which means we're going to apply only 50% of our value, which is going to be a 30-degree angle, because remember every 30 minutes on the clock is 15 degrees. So with that half value wind, we know we have a full mil for full value. This should give us 0.5, and it does right here. Now we're going to go ahead and go to 130. So we know that's going to give us 70% of our value, which we should have a 0.7 mil wind hold. And we do here 0.7. So next, let's go ahead and bump this up to 2 o'clock. So this is going to be 86%. Now, because it's 0.86, we're going to round that up to 90. So this is probably what this is going to do. So this is probably going to take us, what it should be 0.8. It's probably going to be 0.86, which is going to round it up to 0.9. Let's see what happens. And it does. All right. And so next we're going to go to 230, which is going to be 96% of our wind hold. So that's where I would consider that doing a full value wind. So this is probably going to go ahead and bump us up to a full mil, and it does. And that's going to be the same as our full value wind. So that's why I say if you're within 1,000 yards, go ahead and just make 230, make that a full value. So we see that that's 1 o'clock, or I'm sorry, 1 mil for our full value. Now let's do something else. Let's see how far out we'd have to go. Let's do 1,000 yards. Let's see how far out we would have to go to get 96% to have a difference. So we got a full value wind here, 10 mile per hour. which is going to give us 1.9 mils. We're going to go ahead and drop that to 230 and see what that gives us. 0.19. So in with 1,000 yards, we're still there. Let's go to 1,200, see if that makes a difference. That's going to bump us up to 2.4 mils. Now we're going to go to our full value wind. So we had 2.4 mils. Let's see if that goes 2.5. So that works out perfect. So if we were within that 1,000 yards, you got 230, go ahead and just use that full value wind. It's not going to make a huge difference. Let's go back to 9. Let's check one more thing. We're going to go to 900 yards. Let's do a 20 mile per hour wind to see if that makes any kind of difference on that wind angle. So we got full value here, 90 degrees, which would be 3 o'clock, 3.3 mils. Now let's go ahead and drop that down to 230, which is going to be 75 degrees. And I bet that does change. Oh, it doesn't. Okay, well, that's a surprise. Let's go. If you're shooting at 25 miles an hour, I would say you're doing something right. You got to get out there and practice. 900 yards, 25 mile per hour wind at 230, 75 degrees. We got 4.1 mils. Let's go ahead and knock this up to our full value wind. We're going to compare that 4.1 mils. And there we go. So with a high wind like this, that'll start changing it. Or if you're out to 1,200 yards. So now that we have a good idea of what the wind angles, like getting that wind angle, that sign for the wind angle, we're going to jump over to our compass on our phone, and I'm going to show you how to get the wind angle, or I'm going to show you how to get that exact sign or the angle to get the sign for our wind angle. And I'm also going to show you a couple of my favorite ways to get and different ways to actually get the direction of the wind. So let's start off with that. Some of my favorite ways are, and just some ways to do it, you can use something like a spotting scope. So with our spotting scope, what we can do, this is, I would say, my least favorite way, but with our spotting scope, what we can do is we can face our target, and then we're basically just going to turn until we see the mirage boiling or going up and down. And then we know that's our wind direction. Now, the reason I don't like this method, and I've tried this and it works okay, I guess. It's just not something I'm a big fan of. One is because if you're a beginner, reading mirage is really hard to do. It does take a lot of practice. I recommend trying it out. Definitely always try out everything. The more that you learn, the more tools that you have in your toolbox, you may be in a position where that's the only thing or the best tool that's going to work in that environment. But the reason I don't like this method is because you're not always going to be in a position where you could be standing up, having a spotting scope, having a tripod, and you'd be able to move around like this, especially if you're like in a hunting scenario, right? The other thing is, especially for beginners, maybe even the kind of past beginner stage, not quite an experienced intermediate area, is you may not have a spotting scope. I've been shooting long range for a long time, well over 10 years, and only in the last couple of years did I get a spotting scope. I would recommend you spending more money on on more ammunition to learn how to shoot into the wind. But if you're going to be spending money, I think you're better off spending the money from a spotting scope to putting that money in the beginning of getting that better rifle, or even better, getting a better scope for your rifle. So using a spotting scope is not my favorite method. In fact, it's my least favorite method of reading the wind and getting wind direction. Another method is if you have a tripod, which I'm recommending having a tripod. There's a lot of tripods that actually have angle or your cosine or clock degrees on the bottom of it. So another good way, basically the same type of thing. You're going to set your tripod up. You're going to zero it out at the target, and then you're just going to turn your rifle into the wind, and then you read the check mark down there, and that's going to give you basically your angle. You're going to use that, get your sign, and you can continue that way. Again, the reason why I think that's a good method in certain circumstances, but again, what that means that you have to do is point your gun in a direction that you may not be able to point it in. Maybe you can only shoot one direction, and able to use that method, it would cause you to point your gun in a direction that you're not allowed to point it. So again, not my favorite method. If you're on the range or if you have your own property, that's perfectly fine. But that does cause you to, one, you have to have a tripod with you. You have to have more equipment. That's more money that I think it's better off spending on ammunition to be able to get to the range and actually practice this. So the next thing we're going to do, this is actually my favorite method. It basically takes no equipment, and that is I'm going to face into the target, and I'm going to use my face. I'm going to use my body. I got a beard, so I can feel the wind in my beard. So I'm going to face 12 o'clock, which is going to be my target. And then I'm just going to turn into the wind. And I'm going to feel it being even kind of on both sides. And I'm going to say, okay, there is my wind direction right there. Now, if it's moving, that's okay. I can feel that. I can slowly turn my face into it. And I'll say, let's say it's like a 45. And I'll say right there. And then I have my wind direction and I have my target direction. I look at my hands and I'm like, okay, that's about 130. So at 130, I know we're going to count for 70% of our wind. Now, to me, that is the easiest. In my opinion, that's going to be the best method because it relies on zero equipment, just a little bit of knowledge. For the most part, I'm going to use that 95% of the time. Now, again, if I'm shooting extreme long range, or if I'm shooting in a situation where you got hills and valleys, or you've got rows of trees, there could be a bunch of different things going on with the wind. That's only going to get you the wind direction at your spot. So you're going to have to get on, I would rely on using GPS, using a weather meter, different things, and to look at those peaks, valleys, all that good stuff, figure out what the wind's possibly doing. We're going to get more into that a little bit later. Let me show you my second favorite, a very close tie, my second favorite method of getting the wind direction. And it's also going to be getting our cosine if we're in, I'm sorry, not our cosine, our sine, if we're in between these as well. I'm going to be using this method for those extreme long range shots. I also like to use this to just to make sure the method that I typically like doing, just facing into the wind, is that it stays accurate. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and jump over to our compass on our phone, and I'm going to show you that method now. It's real simple. Just download this app. It's a compass app. It's actually should already be on your phone, but it's pretty simple. So you're going to just face into at the target. So let's say our target is 30 degrees. That doesn't necessarily matter so much. We're just going to face into the target. You want to try to get it as accurate as possible. And then you're going to go ahead and touch the screen. It's going to lock that in right at 30 degrees. So then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn. We're going to face into the wind. Let's just call it 105. So we're going to face into the wind. Let's say it's 105 degrees. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 105 and then we're going to minus 30. So we're going to do 105 degrees. Subtract 30. Now we know that we have a 75 degree angle. So next we're going to go to our sine. We're going to type in our 75 degree angle, and that's going to get us 96% of our value that we have to calculate for the wind. But again, at 96, I'm going to go ahead and round that up and just say that's a full value wind. So let's go with just a different angle. We're going to go, see, 270 degrees is our wind. We're going to lock that in, and then we're going to go to 300. So now what we're going to do, we're going to take 300, we're going to subtract 270. So we know that's going to give us 30 degrees. 30 degrees is going to be 50%. We're going to go our calculator. We're going to go to sine 30 degrees. This goes 50% value. So that's it for this episode. Stay tuned for the next episode. I'm going to go ahead and give you the actual wind formula, basically taking everything and putting it together with a formula. That way, if this, you can use that wind formula while you're out on the range. That way, while you're practicing this, you can get better at that in your head until you won't any longer need the wind formula. But that way you can jump straight into it and then start using that formula to get wind calls and start practicing all this stuff out on the range. And then I've got, I think, 2 or 3 more episodes on wind. Wind, when it comes to long range shooting, wind is the most, I would say, in my opinion, probably the most complex topic within your beginning and mid range shooting ability. The wind's going to be really kind of the hardest part. It may be the hardest topic across the entire board until you get into like fine, minute details. Like if you start getting into transonic zone and boat tail angles and stuff like that. But as far as the shooting aspect, I think the wind's the most difficult part. So this is going to be the largest part. And I have multiple more videos coming up about the wind. So this isn't it, guys. So stay tuned. On top of that, I'm also going to be breaking down the mathematics part of it. So we're actually going to use wind. I'm going to give you the formula. We're going to walk you through it. We're going to do some wind calls. And then once I can get out to the range, we're going to put everything together. I'm going to show you exactly, I'm going to walk you through everything, show you exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to take the shots using only this formula. And then I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to use this into your dry fire practice. Thank you guys and stay tuned.